So, thank you all for being here. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're about. Rochester started in 1966. I'm actually a second-generation business owner. My father and I started the business. Lee is also an owner of the business. We have offices across the U.S. Rochester has now been acquired by another firm called DCCM, and we have about 500 people. And we're across, working all the way from California to Georgia. We've got a lot of folks in Texas as well, so we've got them kind of scattered everywhere. So we've got resources across the country. We focus primarily on civil engineering, land surveying, and then project management. We use the project management piece to kind of pull everything together. And then we, for this mapping we're going to talk to you about and trying to find infrastructure, we probably mapped well over 100 campuses at this point in different stages and different types. Okay, so we've been doing this for a pretty good while. And then one thing that's real important to us is relationships. We're not the guys who run in and try to do things fast, make a quick buck, and get out. We're really big on trying to establish a long-term relationship, try to help you be successful, even to the point of trying to use what we're doing on campuses for educational purposes as well. So if we can, in some cases, bring students in, let them experience the drones flying, any of that kind of stuff that might be helpful, or data collection, where it may be useful for the students in educational purposes as well. So we have 4 things we want to make sure that we're covering today, and I'm going to get up here where I can actually read the items so I get them straight. So the tool that we have, you know what this is? Yeah, okay, Embry-Riddle. So this is a campus we're currently working on. It's Embry-Riddle University in Daytona Beach. And so we have, the hope here is to help you understand this is an accurate tool that's to be used. Everything we do, we try to do survey grade. So when we get it, we're trying to get information down to within tenth or a couple of tenths of a foot. It's very accurate and close. The other thing that's important is it increases efficiency. Many of you folks have been dealing with okay, we're going to build new buildings, but you don't get any additional staff. So you have to figure out how we're going to work more efficiently to get the same work done and expand it into other things. So if you can work more efficiently, you can find that you can get more done with the same staff, and we believe this is a tool that helps accomplish that. One of the other things that it's really useful for, how many of y'all have paper files or PDF files that you've got in a file room of some kind, and you got just like mountains of this stuff, right? Years and drawers and hang up and just stuff everywhere. So what's really cool about the tool is you now can take that and organize it geographically. So you put it on the map where this information belongs. So if it's a particular building, the information is attached to the building. If the information is something that's needed for a particular asset, a sewer line, storm sewer line, water line, you attach to that particular line. So the information's there and it's connected to it in such a way that it's easy to find when you need it in the future. So if you got a problem, you click on the thing, pull down, go through the list, open up whatever it is you need to see. And then the last thing is we try to keep it simple. Simplicity is our friend. So we have learned that if we can keep it really simple, I told our GIS folks, I said, look, first of all, you need to know this. Anybody a GIS person? I know we got one in the back of the room. Anybody else in here a GIS person? Okay, good. That makes me feel better. We are not GIS, Lee and I are not GIS people, okay? And I told our GIS folks, I said, look, dumb this thing down so Darrell can do it. Because if Darrell can do it, then anybody can do it, I promise you. So what we try to do is keep it simple, and the philosophy is this. If we keep it simple, then you can push as deep into your organization as you want to. You can get it all the way down to plumbers, electricians, technicians who may be working on different things, because they need to be able to have access to this information as well. They're the folks with boots on the ground who are dealing with it every day, so they need to be able to use it. So that's what we try to do, is keep it simple. So that's the approach.
All right, so I'm going to go over the how. If you stop by our booth, then you probably heard the what it does, what we pulled together. And I just want to walk through how. Before I do that, one time Darrell and I were presenting over in Alabama for the technical system of Alabama. And we talked a whole hour about GIS and what we do and all that. And we mentioned GIS over, and we mentioned GIS this and that. And we got through, we said, anybody have any questions? What do you think the first question was? What's GIS? So GIS is Geographical Information System. If you're familiar with Google Maps, Bing, that kind of stuff, that's a form of a GIS. Ours is all built out of an Esri program called ARC Maps or ARC something. But then it's converted over into a viewer, and that's what you saw if you stopped by our booth. So that's what GIS is. The way we build it is typically with a base map. So when we start on a campus, as we are doing with Embry-Riddle Darrell, right now, we fly the campus. And you say, well, why don't you use Google? Everybody says we have Google Maps or we have Bing Maps or whatever, World Maps. The challenge with that is the accuracy of the base could be spot on depending on if you're in a real urbanized area and they fly it very frequently. But if you're in a rural area, they may not fly it that often, and it could be somewhere in this room or maybe this building. And we like to pinpoint the accuracy, like Darrell said, so it can be a useful tool, and you'll see some of those examples as we go through. So in the olden days, we used to fly it with a plane, set control, surveyors going around, set control, then fly it with a plane overhead. And if you want to, if you're really interested in the difference in the accuracy or the accuracy of the clarity of the photos, I can show you one from 2010 and then show you one we flew last year. It's incredible how clear it is, because obviously the UAV is flying over about 400 feet. Then everybody says, well, how do you pick up the utilities? Well, we do it in a combination of ways. We typically use a utility locator because most of the utilities on a college campus, state facilities, are private, and so that utility, we found the most economical, efficient way to do it is using electromagnetic. They hook up on it, both ends, send a tone through it, use a little thing, put paint on the ground. That's the fastest way to do it. And then our surveyors, everybody says, well, how accurate is the data? Do y'all guess where it is? No, we actually go out there and position on it. So all the above ground features of the non-pressurized system, the storm and sanitary, we pull the tops, we measure the inverse, we get all of that accurate data collected in there. When you look at it in GIS, it's going to look like lines, but just know that's accurate data that makes up those lines. We can also do an assessment to it. This is one of the projects we did down at Georgia Tech, and you can do vacuum bores of those lines, and that's what you're looking at. Are everybody familiar with potholing or vacuum bores? It's like taking a shop vac and a pressure washer and going, but on steroids. So it creates a big hole, and you can actually go down, and these are pictures of what it looks like once they get through the vacuum bore of a gas line or utility. Can also run robotic cameras through there to do condition assessment, which we will be doing at Embry-Riddle after we get the base together, and sending cameras through the storm and sanitary. They're always revealing, and we'll show you that in just a minute on what it can look like, a picture of what that data looks like. So how can this data be viewed? Well, you need three pieces of information: a URL. You've obviously got to have a Wi-Fi or some type of a service to be able to get on the network. A URL, username, and password, and you can get on. It can be viewed from a tablet, from a computer screen, or from an iPhone. Any place you can enter that code in, you can walk to it, and it's all geo-reference. This data, so everybody says, well, what can you use it for? Well, for planning. You can overlay master plans on top of this, and now you start to see projects, and you can effectively plan knowing where the utilities are. Architects are great, and they're very brilliant at creating plans, but sometimes they don't take any consideration for what does the topography look like, what kind of utilities are there, what kind of conflicts are there. That's what we try to pull together to give them a better tool to plan more effectively. People always ask us, is it all or nothing? How do you do this? We get two of the most popular questions are, how much does it cost? I would say, well, it's like buying a car. What do you want? And then what features do you want in the car? Very similar to it. If you hear nothing else, hear this. The approach we're walking through, and you'll see, is very flexible. It's not a one-stop shop. It's tailored to each campus we've worked on. All the projects look basically the same in GIS, but they're tailored for the campus. For Southern Miss, it was phased into 6 phases over 6 years and built that way. This is a campus. The next one is one up at Spartanburg Community College. So you said, well, what can you do with the data? Darrell referenced the plan room and the files. So we literally went out there, located the above ground features. This is what it would look like with the aerial imagery off. This is what we call the planimetric features. And then we overlaid onto there. This is a PDF or a plan that they had in their office. So you can see where that round circle wasn't always a round circle. It was a parking lot. Thus why some of the storm is oriented the way it is. And then You can also, in the next one, you can see this is overlaid with the storm. And I just want to show you real quickly. So everybody's got their plans in their files, and like, this is the gospel where it is, until you overlay it over a base. So the storm line is this line right here. And you see where it was actually drawn on the plans, where it was when it's laid out over there. I mean, it's a good representation. But now you can see even the sanitary, really close, but you can see exactly where it is. You can see how important it could be moving forward through projects. Also, not only do we take the data from the plan room and that data, but we also, the data that we collect in here, we try to incorporate as much information about that feature. This happens to be a storm line, and you can see when you click on it, you said, well, how did y'all come up with that data? Well, we pulled the top. Remember we said we pulled the manholes and looked in there. We measured the pipe, but also we checked that against the data that was in the plans in the event we can't. We see it's 18-inch RCP, and there's the upstream invert and the downstream invert. Not only that, but it can be a repository. If you have somebody new on campus, you want to show a photo. You want to say, hey, I'm talking about this device right here. It can help them bring them up to speed really quick, and that's what the picture of the photo looks like. It was blown up, so it makes a lot of sense. So not just for master planning, but as you can imagine, for emergency response. I can't tell you how many campuses have called up and said they've had gas leaks and can't find the gas valve. They've had water main breaks and can't find where the valves or how to turn them off, what have you. You can just understand the urgency in that. And then the final kind of utility maintenance and repair. I mean, everybody's doing this work. It doesn't take the place of calling the 811 call before you dig, but it's a tool, again, to be able to make smart decisions quickly. So there's a campus that came to us and said, we want to put a bridge, a pedestrian bridge, over a state route. And we had just finished mapping the utilities on that campus. So we're working with the college, the architect, the structural, and they're like, hey, we want y'all to show us where we should position it before we ever get started. What does it look like? How does that look? So what we did is we took the plans, and that is the corridor where they want to put it, and they came to us and said, well, where should we put it across here? Well, you can see there's a lot of utilities. We took that plan, that concept, and overlaid it where we thought would have the best, horizontal, vertical position of it and the least impact to utilities, and laid it out, sent it back to them, said, hey, everybody, y'all look at this. And then from there, we were able to take that and survey the area, put it on a set of plans with no impact to existing utilities whatsoever, and there's the bridge right there. It was just an effective planning tool for a project to be able to walk through. So we were also down on a campus, and this is the main sewer trunk line running down through here. And when we surveyed that building, we couldn't find any evidence of a survey coming out of the building, out of this hall right here. And so we couldn't find any cleanouts, no any data. Well, I got a call because sewer was coming out of the first floor of the building, and they said, hey, we've had to evacuate the building. Every time somebody flushes the upstairs, it comes out on the bottom. And by the time I got there in the evening, they had busted out the wall in the bathroom and run the road as far as they can. And there's all mature vegetation. That's what this is around the campus. Big, huge oak trees and all that. They're about to start digging up the line back there. So I said, hang on a second, let me pull out the video we did of this and the system, and let's run through. And basically we found out this is where the lateral turned into the building, and we figured out it's about 90 feet from the manhole downstream. So we went back on my computer, I pulled up the site, I laid out where the line is from the manhole, about 90-something feet, and I said, all right, if y'all dig here. And then I left and went to the hotel room. By the time I got back in the morning, there was about a 6-foot hole where they dug, where they tapped into the line, ran the rotor, and everybody was back into business. And I said, look, what a great, instead of y'all doing this, all this big destruction to campus, and I said, here's a great way they could surgically repair this line. So we're also on campus, and they did a renovation to the end of the stadium here, and they have homecoming. So while they're on campus, I said, they came to me and they said, after that other project, and they said, I wish y'all had showed us where the utilities were. This is the main gas line going into campus. They said, we put our homecoming tents there, and while we were putting our homecoming tents in, we drove the homecoming stake, for the big tent, into the gas main. And I was like, ooh, I bet that wasn't good. He said, no, it shut down the whole homecoming festivities. We said, well, now you have a map where everybody on campus that has access to it can pull it up to say, hey, don't put your homecoming tents here. Find another place to put your homecoming tents.
Or simply slide the tent over a few feet, right? I mean, it's pretty simple once you know what you're dealing with.
Avoid conflict with it.
Yeah. So this is an example of, this is the Capitol in Atlanta. And we had an interesting situation where they had asked us to do the mapping for them. We presented the information back to them. They wanted it only in PDF form. They didn't want it in GIS for security purposes. And so we said, no, that's no problem. So we presented it in that form, gave it to them. And then when we went to visit with them a few months after they had done this, I said, I want to tell you something. The mapping that we paid you for paid for itself with one change order. And I said, really, what happened? And they said, well, here's the deal. We had an eternal flame that was located in the corner of a parking lot, and they were going to build a new facility. Back up one picture real quickly. So in this corner, that picture is in this corner over here. And so they became a demonstration plaza. So they set up a place. They were shutting down the streets around the Capitol multiple times a week during the session. They were literally having to shut down. And so they said, we've got to put a place for demonstration purposes, but we've got this eternal flame. We want to move it to the north side of the street, and then that way we'll relocate it. So in doing so, they gave the contractor, said, we'd like to move the eternal flame. The contractor said there's going to be a change order of, I don't remember the number, $100,000 to do that because they had to bore and put gas lines in and the whole thing. So as they were moving it, go ahead and go to the next one. The plaza was there. They moved it to the other side. It turned out, because they had the mapping, they knew there was another gas main over there. They went back to the contractor and said, wait a minute, we've got gas over here. Here's our maps that show it. They showed that to them, and they actually saved that fee from the change order. And so there was a significant savings. And the thing that's important is this is the whole part of, we feel like so important, is if you've got information, it's incredibly valuable. It can help you become proactive in solving your problems instead of reactive. And so that becomes a real good thing. So with that one change order, they paid for our fee, which was really kind of cool. We thought it was nice. It's a great story for them to share with us. Is this the?
It is.
Right here. Is this the Carlos story?
Yes.
Okay, good. I love this story. So I figure tell stories. To me, telling stories is what people remember, right? So here's the thing. We had a campus, West Georgia, so right on the Alabama state line almost, on the western side of Georgia, I-20. And the facility director had been there for 40 plus years. And he was getting ready to retire. And he said, look, I'm getting ready to retire. I got to get all this knowledge in my head transferred into some kind of a system. He calls Lee and says, Lee, come help me. We map the campus. He rides off in the sunset and is gone fishing. And so here's what happens. The guy who was brand new on the campus had been there for 2 weeks. Just drove into campus one morning in facilities, pulls in the parking lot at 7:30 in the morning, staff standing outside. They walk up to him and say, Carlos, we've got a problem. And he said, what's your problem? And he said, we got water coming out of the ground over here. We don't know how to shut the water off. Lynn, the guy who just retired, knows where all the shutoffs off are. What do we do? He literally pulls his iPhone out and pulls up the map and isolates to the water layer, and he starts walking until the blue dot on the screen is over the shutoff valve, and he goes, turn that valve off. And they turned the valve off and the water stopped. And this is a guy who'd been on campus for 2 weeks. And so the cool part of that is if you've got good information and you take the time to put it in accurately, you get tremendous results out of the back end. And so we've repeatedly seen stories like that where they've had great situations. We had a similar story up at App State in Boone, North Carolina. Had a campus, same kind of deal. Guy was absolutely said, this stuff doesn't work. It's voodoo. I don't believe it. And he goes out there with his tablet and he starts walking until he gets on top of a manhole, and there's a whole audience standing there watching him thinking, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And he turns around and he goes, just like that. It worked, because it does work. And it's tremendously valuable if, like I say, if you got accurate information, you get good stuff.
Yep. Have y'all ever looked for or had utilities that have been buried? You're trying to find them, or this was the same case here. There was a sanitary sewer manhole that had been buried, and the people that had been there for 30 years had said, yep, it's a manhole there. The guys that are new there said, no, there's no evidence of a manhole there. So we said, well, there's one way to find out. So in our condition assessment, we ran a video camera through this manhole, and in so doing, we found that where they doghoused the line. So there's the line. That's a manhole that was doghoused on top of it, and it's about 50 feet from the last line. Well, it was interesting. When we laid it out from the manhole, we said, here's where it is. Y'all start digging here. And so they start digging, and about 8 foot deep is their manhole. They'd covered it up from the construction they did of the last project. Obviously, they added some rings to it to bring it up to grade, because this would be a pretty bad environmental problem if they'd have left it. So while we were down at the sister conference to this in Georgia, we were on Jekyll Island. We get this picture and I get this clip sent to us. There's a sinkhole in the entrance of the campus drive. Well, that's a problem. They shut it down, and everybody's standing around doing this, looking at the hole, wondering, hey, how did this get here? And so the guys reached back to campus. The guys on campus said, hey, call the county that we're in, get them out here to fix it. And I started thinking, you know what? We just did a boundary of this campus. I don't really think this is in the county's jurisdiction. You see, where the sinkhole is right in here. This happens to be a state route. It's the wrong people. They should have called the Department of Transportation, because their right-of-way comes into campus. But I said, hang on a second. I said, let me print it out. I printed it out, and I said, okay. And also I said, I think it's the storm line that's failing in here. Sure enough, when I pulled it up and I laid the line over, I'm like, oh yeah, the storm line is. But I said, you still got the wrong people out there. So while we were down there in Jekyll, not even just talking with my clients, because all the management was down there, we printed the sheet out, laid it out over, printed out the boundary, sent it to the DOT office. Those guys were going to come out there and fix it. And sure enough, here's the new imagery of what it looks like. They patched the line and it was done. I mean, we literally handled everything while we were down at Jekyll, because we had all that information right at our fingertips, that all we had to do is shoot out a couple emails to get it taken care of. And really, guys on campus didn't really have to even lift a finger other than put some cones out around it to get it fixed.
DOT paid for it, and it had cost the campus nothing.
That's right.
That's great.
That's right. And they were able to demonstrate all that. I mean, really at a slip of a finger, instead of going through all this long jargon and debating back and forth. Also, on this campus, we replaced a sewer line. And in so doing, on the sewer line right here, the one that's highlighted, we were able to attach the plans and profile of the sewer line right to the plan. I'm sure everybody's got plans of projects they do. Typically, they get done, they get stuck in the shelf, then nobody else can find them, because wherever somebody find them. So what we've been trying to encourage clients to get in the process of doing is taking this data when they do have a place to deposit it and attach it to the sheet. That way, everybody moving forward can know exactly what happened on that line, whatever work was done, and it's not lost in translation. Not just for utilities and lines, but on this campus, this is the Nesbitt building. When they built it, we received the floor plan. So they're like, hey, let's do the same thing with the building floor plans that we're doing with the plan and profile. And that's what you see here is an example of the PDFs that attach. It doesn't have to be PDFs. It can be CAD files. It can be images. They just happen to choose that. But also, as technology increased, the campus started taking all of those flat files and putting them in a repository that they maintain and they keep up. So we said, hey, why don't we try this? Why don't we see if we can hyperlink that building to your GPS? And so when you click on it, it leads you over to a login to their campus. You add in a username, password, and basically you're able to pull the building plans up. This is all of the files in their repository on campus. Everything that they've scanned in, they've got access to wherever they're at. Now you start to think it's not just a PDF, it's their whole repository filing system. Have you ever tried to look for plans and you go out there, you got to go back to the files and you got to rummage through? I mean, y'all, everybody's done it. I mean, we do it with our clients all the time. Imagine having that kind of information at your fingertips.
And it's not just for that campus. They've got 5 campuses.
That's right.
So this is the repository for all 5 campuses. And not only plans, but all of their operation maintenance manuals. You start thinking of all the information that you collect, CAD files, BIM you got Revit models, any of that kind of stuff, it can all be attached and linked down to the point of putting cameras on campus. So if you wanted a camera, if you have cameras on, which all of us pretty much have now, IP cameras can be linked in here as well. You put an icon on the page, click on the icon, it pulls up the camera, you log in. If you've got the credentials to log in, you log in username, password, and it opens up a live feed of the camera directly through GIS.
So we also, in so doing, we started another project. This is Kennesaw State College. And as we got into the second phase of the project, the campus said, oh yeah, we have a water system where we have live data of our water system. So it's like telemetry. Are y'all familiar with that word? It just kind of sends a signal of actual live time data back to a repository that they have that manages it. So what we did is we linked that back to the water system. So when you click onto a water feature where the blue dot is, it links over here and it opens it up. You see the water signal, and this is just a screenshot, but I can literally drill down to the water meter and tell you, is it moving and how much water is flowing through it, how much the cost. The entire data for the system is right here at their fingertips, wherever they're at. It's not you say, well, that may be neat. It's not really neat till there's a problem and the water's going and you're trying to figure out, is the water still going? Do I shut it off? Those kind of things. So it's really just it's a really neat tool for being able to manage that system. So while we were up in App State working on Boone's, App State's college in Boone, North Carolina, we started locating the utilities, and we noticed that we saw there's a line here that crosses a storm line coming out of the building. And they told me, they said, oh yeah, they just bored that gas line in. So we said, well, we had a video camera up there. We said, let's just run the camera through and just see what kind of condition they were in before y'all take over the building. And when we did, we found out, hey, they bored the gas line right through their storm line. And the interesting thing about it is the contractor was gone, still in town, but gone. And I said, well, why don't you take this video over to them? He said, well, we've already paid them. They're already gone off campus. And I said, hey, look, they got nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Take it to them and tell them you don't want their gas line through your storm line to figure it out. And I said, okay. So we left town, came back about a week later, and he said, oh, they moved their gas line. I said, every time. I mean, they know that's not the right way to do, and they want to do more work with the campus. So, he had everything to gain and nothing to lose.
And again, repaired it at no cost to the campus.
That's right.
Okay, so that's the beauty of the information. This is being the proactive piece we're talking about. If you have the information, you've got the leverage to do what needs to be done. So it makes it easy. And
so on the campus also, we were running the video camera through some storm lines, and they go through a lot of freeze thaw where they use a lot of salt. And so we started noticing a pattern here. Some of the old corrugated pipes were looking really rough, and looking at the bottom, they were suspect. That's because there was no bottom to them. And so I was like, well, this is an accident waiting to happen. Y'all really need to be proactive about this. Darrell can probably share with you a story about not being proactive.
So one campus that will remain nameless had some kids snow sledding on their campus in the winter. And kids were riding down the slope, having a great time out there, and all of a sudden the kid sliding down the hill and disappears. He fell into a sinkhole. The sinkhole was one of these pipes that had collapsed. Now, interestingly, we had shared with the campus a couple of years prior. We had done some of this videoing, and we said, look, this needs to be repaired. You got some serious problems. And they were in the middle of their summer projects. Everybody got the summer projects, right? And you got to hurry. You got a lot to do in a very short, compressed period of time. So we delivered this information in the middle of the summer. They said, yeah, thank you so much. We gave them a top 10 list. This was on the top 10 list. Well, time goes by. They had forgotten to go back and look at it, and long story short, kid literally slid into a pipe. So the good news is kid wasn't hurt. okay? But it made them aware that, wow, we really have a serious problem. They had another similar problem on campus where we had told them sanitary sewer, the entire pipe was fractured, needs to be resolved. You need to get that relayed. Well, guess what happened? That same summer, they were scrambling around. First day of school, kids come back to school, start taking showers, getting ready to go to class. Sewer line surges, collapses on itself, and blocked off, and then they had raw sewage running across the ground because the pipe had collapsed. So that's the kind of stuff that will happen. And again, so if you've got to now go call, think about this. You got to go call a contractor to come out and do that repair. What are you dealing with? An emergency, right? You're dealing with an emergency situation. And guess what you're going to pay?
Premium.
Yeah. Mucho dinero, right? It's going to be a big number. You're going to have to pay real money because what's going to happen is they're going to charge you because it's an emergency call. But if you know that situation and you can call them in advance and get 3 quotes and get a competitive bid, now you've got the chance to go back and actually do it in a more cost-effective manner. This is what I'm talking about, being proactive about solving the problem instead of reactive. And so that's the kind of stuff that you got to think about with this. You want me to do this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so last one. So we've got a campus that had, I don't mind sharing, same campus that had the tent problem with the stake into the gas main. So they had a contractor go do a directional bore. They did a power upgrade of their football stadium, okay? And they ran a directional bore of power over to the football stadium. In doing so, we ran the sewer line. We ran a camera through the sewer line, and this is what we found. Electrical conduit through the middle of a sanitary sewer, okay? Now, we all know electricity and water don't blend real well, right? So this is what we found, and what we discovered was they had a real problem. So let's back up for a second. I want to tell you, just think about when's Murphy's Law? When's that line going to give you trouble? Sold out game. That's right.
Yep.
Homecoming, football game. It's going to be in the middle of a football game, right? And what's going to happen when that happens? No toilets. Shut the bathrooms down in the middle of a football game. Can you imagine that? Pretty bad. Possibly no power. That's right. May have shut the power off too. Could be either one. Could be both.
Sinkhole in the field.
So the thing is, again, opportunity now to do proactive instead of reactive. And I think they got this one solved. Same situation.
They did.
By the contractor.
Came back and
showed the video to the contractor. He went back and solved the problem and got it taken care of on his dime instead of the campus's dime. And nobody got embarrassed by it as well, right? Which is good.
So, yeah, Emory Riddle. So does anybody have any questions?
So everybody's doing utilities work with a lot of people. What's the process to update? If you've already mapped it out and you've made a recommendation, hey, this line needs to be moved or it needs to be replaced. So it's shifted or it's moved and it's out of the mapping area. How do you update that?
So you go back. Typically what we do is say, let's go back. And here's our philosophy on this. Once you get the system in place, it is a living document. And you need to update it every time you do a project or within a reasonable period of time. So most campuses will go either quarterly, semi-annually, or annually and do updates. And they'll take the campus will either notify us or they do it themselves. So when we do this for our clients, it's your data, okay? I'll make sure everybody understands it is your data. We can either host it for you at a very nominal fee, and for us it's $300 a month, that's what we charge, or you can host it yourself, and we'll support you as needed. Either one's fine, but you only want one gatekeeper, okay? It's very important that you only have one gatekeeper because when people are manipulating data, things get moved accidentally, and then the next thing you know, you've got a shut off you've got to go find, and you can't shut it off because it got moved. Somebody moved it on the page and didn't know why they moved it. Nobody knows who did it. So you want to make sure you've got the gatekeeper. So to update, typically what we do is we'll go back and do it. In many cases, they'll say, let me give you a consolidation of all of our projects over the past year, and we update it. Yeah, and it depends. If you've got a lot of activity on your campus, some of the larger campuses like you guys are, you may need to do that more often. Some of the smaller campuses will do it annually, and then we just update it annually. In addition to that, and one thing, go ahead and Lee, go ahead and pull up a live. We need to pull up, what's the one that we...
East Carolina would be good. I mean,
yeah,
what are you looking for?
Good. Actually, that's a good one. So pull that up. And actually, I tell you a good one too is Southern Miss. So we're going to pull up show you a live demo. So
there's one.
Which one you got?
That was North Georgia. I'll pull them all three.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, just pull up one at a time. Don't try to do too many. Thing will shut down on you or something. So typically what we try to do is when we update is to go ahead and get a new aerial. Because if you've built new buildings and you've done new improvements on campus, things don't line up, right? And so if you're looking for, let's say you're looking for, I'll give you a story. In fact, we didn't show it in this particular case. We had one campus that called us and said, we've got a water line. We've been digging for 8 hours out here with 3 men and a rubber tire backhoe, and we can't find it. Our as-builts show it in the location, and we had not mapped this campus. We go out there and meet with them. Turns out they're digging on the wrong side of the road. The water line was on the opposite side of the road from where they were digging. And they had just wasted 8 hours. And clearly, you guys don't have that kind of time to waste, right? I mean, you got too many other things you need to be doing. And so that becomes a real waste of time. So what we've done is said, look, let us help you get it in the right place. And so when that aerial changes, it's very cheap to update the aerial. It's not a big number. Update it whenever you do those updates, and it helps show the new information because a picture's worth 1,000 words. It helps you see a whole lot of information. The nice part of this particular campus, this Southern Miss, is that they actually said, look, let us look at the master plan. Do you have a way of putting the master plan in as well? And we said, yeah, absolutely. Let's overlay the master plan and bring it in. So the master plan is set up in here so that you actually have it as a separate layer, and it's screenable. So go ahead and turn the utilities on, Lee. And when you look at the utilities, so you can see the impact to the infrastructure with the new construction. So in advance of trying to build something, you're looking at, okay, what's going on that I need to deal with before I actually go do it? Too many times people go out and start construction projects and they find out that, oh gosh, why didn't we know about this 18-inch water main that's in the ground that now we're building this building and now I got to move a water main that's not in my budget. And so you've got these capital improvements that are happening when they haven't done the planning. And everybody gets enamored. Once it's placed in a position, it's not going to move, right? So it's better to know that well in advance. But you can see in this case, go ahead and screen it back, Lee. When you look at what's going to happen, you'll see how much infrastructure has got to be dealt with in some form or fashion to make that change. And so that's the reason for making you aware of that. In some cases, they can be abandoned and left in place, but you want to know it's abandoned, right? We don't want to be out there digging around and all of a sudden we hit something. And, oh my gosh, what just happened? Stop all construction because we don't know what it is, and you waste a couple of days trying to figure it out. I think one that's helpful is go to North Georgia. You can do the buildings or.
Okay.
I see thermal in there. Any thermal roofs when you're doing your scan?
If we have the information, we can. We have sub-consultants who do that. So if you needed to do it, certainly can be flown and get the thermal imaging on the roof so you can see where your leaks are and so forth. And it's tremendous value, especially in Florida when you got roof leaks. You end up with heat loss and or air conditioning in this case, and lose a lot. And it can have all kinds of impacts on your utility bills. So it has a big impact.
I know you were asking about vegetation, and I know we've had a couple questions about that. I'll show you what this campus did because it's very unique. So and we did not go out and collect this data, we added it to it. So there's a layer we created called vegetation. We call it inventory trees. So when you click on that, basically it's going to populate all the data that they provided us for this. So they have an extensive inventory of all the information on the tree. So when you click on a tree, you'll see it pulls over here. You see this is their data dictionary, their inventory, about the tree, and it's set for every tree on campus. Because tree is an asset, just try to replace one or a tornado come through and destroy a bunch of them.
You have a storm come through and you don't know what you've lost. You've lost the information. You don't have a way to reproduce to tell somebody what.
So they've got this on every tree on campus that they've inventoried. So I just wanted to share that to say, yep, there's a whole, there's really neat. This is a great go by or starting point.
While you're there, just go building if you want to. Just click on one of the buildings.
And they have a pretty extensive building plan. I know they've got on some of their buildings they've got CAD files that are attached to the building, but every building, I think this is one of them, has DWG attached to it. We also have building information.
Just click on one of them, just pull the building plan up. And what you're seeing is live, so that's live. It's straight off the cloud, working through the Wi-Fi here in the conference center. But basically, you can put anything in there that you want. I mean, anything that you see that's of value and would be important to you, you want to tie that to make, again, it's just trying to create efficiency with what you're doing.
So is there any other questions y'all have for us, or?
Can you get down to the level where you're identifying shut-offs in a building, in a room?
You can that's an if. So historically, what we've tried to do is outside, but the inside, yes, you can. So what I would recommend is you go to that building and we identify it on the floor plan and then show where in that building it is. And you could have a note referenced on there where it says, here's where the shutoff is in this building. Go to the corner and look in the ceiling, up in the ceiling, and it's there. And you can just have a note there referencing it. And it can be tied to that PDF, so it's right there. Click on the building, go to the shutoff. You'd have a plan that says shutoffs. Click on it, and then pull the floor plan up with all the shutoffs labeled in it. Absolutely.
So one of the closest things we've done to that is that East Carolina, while we were in the process of doing their outside mapping, we put a layer, we created a layer because they said, we have some life safety features that we'd like to show related to the buildings. And so when you click on them, I click on a building, I'll click on this building, it'll pull up all of the features. Now this is what they gave us to add to and this is the screen that comes up that you see. There's a pop-up screen. There's more information in the view additional details is where all the data is stored. But for a pop-up, basically, there it is. It just gives you a quick information. It can be tailored to whatever you want. But that's the basic information. But there's also generator information and I think switchgear, transfer switch information.
Go ahead and click on it. And so that's the PDF that they gave us. So we went ahead and took that and attached it to that building. So you've got the information.
And I believe
Again,
there's some more here.
Let's see if it's in the bottom.
I don't remember.
Another thing that's nice is on this particular campus, they have a situation where they've got both the public, the municipality in the area. So the city is providing certain services to the campus, and the campus provides some of their own. And there was confusion between whose is which. So you've got a situation where shutoff valves are partially owned by the city and partially owned by the campus, and they're in the same general area. And so it's hard to know which is which. Interestingly, we actually spent some time with them, went to the city, said, will you share your data with us? We'll share our data with you, so everybody's sharing. And what ended up happening is we now have, this is the entire town, okay, the entire city's infrastructure that's being mapped, showing where their infrastructure is on campus. So we can show you not only what the campus owns, but what the municipality owns as well, so the city of Greenville.
That's right.
And they've color-coded theirs differently, so it's easy to identify. Go ahead and just turn on water with both, and you can show. Yeah, turn off gas and power for the city. There you go. And so now you're able to see both which is owned by whom. It's like you got something else turned on. Let's scroll up. There's another utility on somewhere. No,
that's it.
Okay. But what that, yeah, that's good. And so what it does is it gives you ability now, because it's screened, we can show you which is whose. So when they get into an area and they're not sure who owns the valve or who owns whatever the issue is, the asset, you can identify it easily by that. So it's pretty nice. You can go in and just about anything we can get to through the internet, we can bring in and attach it and upload it. So it's very helpful. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You map the transformer locations of power.
Yes, sir.
When you click on that,
Photo documentation.
what data comes out of that? Is that something that's provided?
Have you got the power?
Tico or wherever
So it depends on what you have available. Okay, so this is one of those things, it depends on how much you want us to do. We can go as deep as you want to go, or we can kind of keep it superficial and you furnish information, and it really depends. But obviously, the deeper we go, the more expensive it becomes. But yes, all that information get in there. Typically, what we recommend folks do, get the map figured out. Then start building the other things on it that are important to you. Get the foundation right. Then you start, it's like building a house. Let's get the foundation right. Once we get the foundation right, then we're going to build on top of that. But yeah, you can absolutely, if you have transformer information, any of that information you have, if you don't have it, we have subs who have that information who can come in, and we've done that quite a bit on military installations, where we go in and bring in electrical engineers, all kinds of telecommunication folks, all kinds of folks if they need to, can come in and evaluate. Not a problem. Any other questions? We're on time. All right. Thank you for listening. Appreciate you being here.